For centuries, caffeine has been the world's most used psychoactive substance, a catalyst for innovation, a companion to revolutions, and a fuel for productivity. From Sufi monks in Yemen sipping coffee to stay awake during midnight prayers, to Enlightenment thinkers exchanging ideas in European coffee houses, caffeine has shaped our world in profound ways that we can't even begin to imagine. Even the coffee break, popularized during the Industrial Revolution, wasn't just a pause in the workday. It was a strategic move to boost productivity in factories and offices alike. But in the world of software engineering, coffee isn't just a beverage. It's a lifeline. From dawn till dusk, and occasionally back to dawn again, caffeine has fueled pretty much every line of code I've ever written. But a few months ago, I started to wonder, am I running on passion or just on caffeine? Inspired by caffeine's profound impact on history and its death grip on my daily life, I decided to make a drastic change, to quit caffeine forever. This wasn't about just cutting out coffee. It was about completely redefining my relationship with productivity, health, and well-being. The guidelines were straightforward, but for somebody who measured time in cups of coffee, this was going to be a monumental shift in the way that I get anything done at work or for myself. But understanding the withdrawal symptoms didn't help make them any easier to deal with, especially when there were deadlines looming over me. I started to work more hours every day in order to compensate for the temporary decline in my productivity, which actually worked out to a degree. In order to cope with the lack of caffeine, I sought alternatives. Herbal teas and water became my new go-to, and I started integrating short walking breaks and lunch naps into my normal workflow in order to maintain focus. The first week was definitely the hardest, leaving me feeling exhausted by 6 p.m. every single day. But this went away after about week 3. Over time, the fog began to lift. My mind felt clearer, and tasks that seemed daunting became manageable again. After a month, I noticed improvements not just in my work, but in my overall well-being. My sleep quality improved, and I had energy for activities outside of coding, which was something I wasn't used to having even when I was using caffeine on a daily basis. You see, the way that caffeine works is that it blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, preventing you from feeling sleepy. While this can temporarily boost our alertness, it can also lead to disrupted sleep patterns and increased stress over time. So by eliminating caffeine, I was allowing my body to naturally recalibrate. Try thinking back to when you were a kid, or whenever it was before you started using caffeine. I remember that when I was younger, in high school even, I didn't get tired every day just from waking up and going to school. I was able to day in and day out get everything that I needed to get done without having to rely on the psychoactive substance every single day to keep my mind going. And that's that same feeling that I was trying to get back every day by eliminating my caffeine intake. And this whole process of quitting caffeine was making me curious. How did we become so reliant on caffeine as a society? Caffeine has played a monumental role in shaping our world, from the ancient coffee forests of Ethiopia to the Ottoman Empire's bustling coffee houses. It became a social lubricant and stimulant for intellectual discourse. During the Enlightenment, European coffee houses were called penny universities. For the price of a cup, anyone could join discussions that spurred new ideas and revolutions. In his book titled Caffeine, Michael Pollan notes that coffee's introduction in Europe corresponded with a shift from a beer drinking culture to a coffee drinking one, fueling the Industrial Revolution by keeping workers alert during long factory hours. 4 months into this journey, I can now reflect on the transformation. The cravings have fully subsided and a sense of balance has started to return to my life. Before, when I was drinking caffeine, and I know this isn't the same for everyone, but I felt an unnatural amount of motivation and inspiration. An amount of motivation that, while large enough to make me work harder, also led to overworking a lot of the time, which was terrible for my work-life balance. Without caffeine, I found a sustainable rhythm. My stress levels decreased and I became more present and engaged in my work and personal life. With caffeine, I feel that the peaks were higher and the lows were much lower in terms of getting things done and keeping my mind in a healthy state. Where I was jittery after a cup of coffee before, I now feel scarily calm and collected even when facing situations that used to give me a lot more anxiety. There's a famous quote used by Navy SEALs, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." And it's something that I think directly applies to how my productivity feels now. Now that my productivity is consistent day in and day out, it makes me better able to gauge and meet trickier deadlines, as I now know how much work I can actually get done on a day-by-day basis without any external factors like how well I handle my caffeine intake during a specific time frame. If you'd like to try cutting caffeine out for yourself, here's some of the tips that I think could help you out the most. Firstly, when you're cutting out caffeine, I recommend gradually reducing the amount of caffeine that you intake. So if you're usually 2 to 3 cups a day, try to cut that down to 1 cup a day at first, maybe 2 half cups, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon or something like that, just so that your productivity doesn't drop off a cliff at first. The hard part here is going to be managing withdrawal symptoms. Now, if you gradually reduce, these shouldn't be as big of a problem, but you will be facing things like headache, fatigue, dehydration, and the like. Now, in order to manage these symptoms, I highly recommend that you start this caffeine intake decrease during a weekend or a long weekend or some sort of vacation. Yes, it's going to be tough, and yes, it's going to suck for that one weekend, but in the first few days, the withdrawal symptoms can cause you really bad headaches. And I remember not getting anything done when I first started. So it's going to be a lot less frustrating if you do this over a weekend when you're not actually meant to get anything done. My next piece of advice is going to be setting realistic expectations for how long it might take to feel normal again. Now, some people don't get withdrawal symptoms when they stop taking caffeine, and I'm very jealous of those people, but I am not one of them. When I stopped caffeine, every time I stopped caffeine, I get terrible headaches, I get terrible brain fog, and I get terrible dehydration. My body feels like it has stopped taking a drug that it needs to live and feel normal. Like I said before, to feel fully normal again, it took me at least 1 to 2 months. Whether this is going to be the same for everybody, I do not know. But if you set the expectation that it's going to take this long, chances are that yours will take less time and it will feel better in your head that you're not constantly waiting to feel normal again. Without caffeine, in terms of being productive, I highly recommend that you start doing meditation, breathing exercises, and using the Pomodoro technique so that you don't have to use caffeine as a crutch for your productivity. The Pomodoro technique is going to be key here because it's going to allow you to take 5-minute breaks or longer in the middle of being productive so that you don't need some sort of energy boost to keep working day and night, hour through hour, and instead you're going to be taking healthy breaks after a healthy amount of time being focused. I also highly recommend using a note-taking app or journal in order to monitor your own mood and productivity changes during this time. It's going to be important to know that how caffeine affects you so that you can keep track of what is changing and what is your normal when not affected by this substance. Trying to quit caffeine forever in an industry that practically runs on this stuff was challenging, but profoundly rewarding. I learned that true productivity doesn't come from a stimulant, but from within, from balance, rest, and mindful living. Caffeine has been intertwined with human culture for centuries, influencing everything from social structures to economies. But while I respect its place in history, I now know that I don't need it to thrive. My journey has taught me that sometimes letting go can lead to growth in both life and in productivity. At the end of the day, optimizing ourselves is just as important as optimizing the code that we write. Whether or not caffeine is part of your routine, being mindful of your habits and the things that you put into your body can lead to a healthier, more balanced life. Thank you for joining me as I talk about my journey in quitting caffeine. If you've ever considered making a significant change in your life, especially in the fast-paced world of tech, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into balancing your life and code.